Welcome to the F50 Woman Podcast, dedicated to sharing stories from a diverse community of women in order to provoke you into a passionate pursuit of life, build unshakable character, and achieve extraordinary things. Now, here is your host, Julia Jack.
A woman over 50, this woman wrote a book about the Ukraine called Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, and she's donating portions of the proceeds to help those affected by the war. But as a young girl, she wanted to be a brain surgeon, an Olympic skater, and an author. Somewhat of a multi-potentialite, it wouldn't be until this educated and confident woman fell into and climbed out of the darkness of abuse that her life would prosper. Come and listen to how she got out, rode tandem bike across the country, and prospered. This is Teri Brown's story. She's a writer, an author, a self-proclaimed desk jockey, and another strong and amazing F50 woman. Hey, F50 women. Thank you so much for joining. I'm here with Teri Brown, and she is a budding author. And I know she's been a writer forever, but now she's going into historical fiction. And I can't wait for you guys to hear about her book. We're going to talk a lot about that. But we also want to get to know Teri and who she was, who she is, how she got here, because, we want to learn that big lesson that she's learned throughout her life. But I just want to mention her book is called Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, and it is a book set in Ukraine. I think this is perfect for just this time because we know we have a lot of questions and challenges with that. And I think this book will serve as an inspiration that you can read as you either deal with family there, or if you're far away like me and just dealing with trying to figure out what the heck is going on. But enough of me. Thank you so much, Teri, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. So let's just start out. Let's get to know you. Let's get to know you as a younger woman, a younger girl, whichever phase you want to talk about, whatever's relevant. What did you want to be when you got older? So we know, how did you get here? Maybe you started out as a dentist. I don't know. Yeah. Tell us about you.
Yeah. So as a child, I had all of the normal dreams of, a kid. I wanted to be a brain surgeon, but I also wanted to be an Olympic ice skater.
Okay. That could work.
And I wanted to be an author. So I kind of feel like I got 1 out of 3. So I'm feeling pretty good about life. Yes. When I went to college, I'm one of those people, I have a hard time deciding what I want to do. I didn't know what to focus on. So I have 2 majors and 2 minors from going to college. Okay. I have a degree in education, but I never actually taught school, although I did homeschool my children. So I feel like at least I used that a little bit. Yes. Right. And then I have a degree in psychology. And although I've never really done anything specific with it, I feel like I have used it with my writing and raising children. So, that kind of goes. Yeah. And then I have a minor in math, and that's because I just enjoyed it. Okay. And then I have a minor in sociology, and I hate to admit it, but it's because I had a crush on one of the professors. Okay. So
you got something out of it. You got a lot of information out of it.
Yeah. Yes. But, I enjoyed his classes, actually. And so I just took all of them, and that ended up being that I had a minor in the field. So, but then I got married and had 4 children and decided that I wanted to homeschool. And that was something that just it was not ever something on my radar, but life kind of twists and turns and happens. And that's what I ended up doing. Yeah. And then I got a divorce. And so now I was a single mother with 4 homeschooled children, and I had to figure out what I was going to do because I didn't want to change the fact that we were homeschooling. But on the other hand, I needed to have an income. So I started writing, but I was writing for small businesses. And I found that small businesses, they had the people who ran these companies had wonderful ideas, and they were terrible at getting them down on paper. And so they would give me articles and say, now I've written this article and I think it just needs a really quick edit. And I would read it and think, well, quick, okay.
Yeah.
So I started working with small businesses, and I found it to be a really good way for me to work from home, because most of the time these articles, they might need them, like in the next week, but they didn't need them today at 2.
Yeah.
So I was able to kind of rearrange my schedule around my children and get the articles written. And so I started that in 2000. Then came what I call the dark period of my life, because I met this man, and while we were dating, he seemed like what I needed. He was kind of a go-getter, and he seemed to love my children, which was very important because, when you're a single mom of 4, and so we got married, and I found that he was emotionally abusive. And I am not a quitter, and I had already been divorced once.
Yeah.
So I stayed in that relationship for 14 long, miserable, horrible years.
Wow.
Insistent that I was going to fix it.
Okay.
And during that time, I don't know how many of your listeners have been in an emotionally abusive relationship or any kind of an abusive relationship, but it doesn't happen all at once. It's not like one day everything was fine and the next day everything sucked, and you could see that and you could say, oh my goodness, we need to get out of here. It's like a frog in a boiling pot of water. You stick it in the cold water, and then you just start heating it up slowly. And before long, the frog is dead and it didn't even know it was happening. And that's kind of the way it was with me. It was little tiny things at first. And I attributed them to, we're newly married and we have 4 children and we're trying to make a blended family.
Right.
And so I gave him a lot of leeway, figuring, this is hard. And it was hard. And
it is hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, well, you can't expect him to come in and just be the perfect stepfather on day 1.
Yeah.
So I gave him leeway. And it was like the more leeway I gave him, the worse it got. And then the arguing started, and then it was not a good situation at all.
Okay.
But in that period of time, I went from being a very confident, educated woman to someone who didn't believe in herself at all.
Wow.
2 years before I left, and I should have left at that point, and I can't even explain myself. I don't even know why I didn't. But 2 years before that, I left him just briefly for a few days. And I don't even think in my mind I thought I was leaving him. I was just getting away from the situation, trying to get a break. And I stayed with my son, who at this point is now married. And, and I told him, he said, Mom, you got to leave. And I told him, I said, yeah, but what would I do? I'd end up being a Walmart greeter and living in a cardboard box.
Right.
And I meant it.
Yeah.
And I look at that now, and it kind of makes me sick to my stomach to think that I had been all the way to that point where I didn't even believe that I could live in anything other than a cardboard box, that I wasn't going to be able to do anything for myself. I've already told you I have 2 majors and 2 minors.
Yep.
I'm obviously a capable person, but I wasn't at that point. I no longer had any belief in myself.
Yeah.
So when I did go back, I drew a line in the sand, and it was over finances, because I would come home sometimes from, just even shopping, to find that all of our money was missing, and that he had taken it out of the joint account and put it somewhere else. And then I didn't have access to it. And that had happened several times. And that's what had precipitated that event when I went to stay with my son.
Right.
And so I told him, never again.
Yeah.
Never again. It's the only line I drew.
Yeah.
And I told him, if you ever move that money again, I will never come back. I will leave, no questions asked, and I'm done. And 2 years later, he did it again. And 20 hours after that, all of my things were in storage, and I had moved 3 hours away.
Seriously.
So,
you meant what you said.
Meant it. And it's interesting because I only had the one thing.
Yeah.
And to this day now, I'm grateful that he did that. Because if he hadn't done it, I might still be there desperately trying to fix something that wasn't fixable.
Yeah.
So it was right around that point that I decided to start working on fiction. And I had these ideas. Oh, I didn't have any belief in myself and there was no way and I wasn't going to be able to do it. And 2 weeks before I left him, I had gone to a writer's retreat and I spent a whole week and I wrote 50,000 words. And the book is not very good, but it's okay. It was my first attempt and it was from start to finish. And it showed me that I had this ability that I didn't believe I had. And 2 weeks later, when he, threw his gauntlet down and took the money, I left. And I really think that it's like all kind of combined together. I had that little victory.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe that I had to put up with stuff like that anymore. And I didn't.
Yeah.
So move forward now. And I'm married for the third time, and I almost hate to say it. It almost makes me I feel like I should have a letter on my head or something. But, and I was never going to get married again. I had no intention of doing that. But life intervenes, and I met this man. His name's Bruce. He and I are perfectly matched for one another. And while we were dating, he said, "I've always wanted to ride across the United States on a bicycle."
Okay.
Well, I wanted some kind of an adventure to prove that I was more than I believed I was, because I had gotten to the point where, at that point I'm 55, 54, 55, somewhere in there. I didn't think that there was anything left in my life. I had raised my children. I had already been divorced twice. I was going to continue working for small businesses, writing their articles and, kissing grandbabies, and then I would die. I mean, I just didn't see, I wasn't like miserable, but I didn't see that there was any big thing out on the horizon for me.
Right.
And when he started talking about wanting to do this bike trip, I thought, I want to do that. Okay. So in the summer of 2020, 1 year after we got married, we rode on a tandem bicycle from Astoria, Oregon to Washington, D.C., 3,102 miles.
Guys are nuts.
Yeah. Yes. And it was the most incredible and hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Okay. Now give us a little picture. Did you go to the gym every day before that? Were you sort of an exercise bum? Yeah.
Okay. So no, I am a desk jockey. I am so not, this is not me. Okay. Yeah. Like sitting at a desk and writing, that's me. I love to walk on the beach, but you know, like picking up shells and taking pictures of the sun coming up kind of walking. I did lose weight. I lost 80 pounds. And some of that was mostly because I felt I needed to and I wanted to, and I was finally in a safe space, I think, where losing weight was okay. Yeah. And I know this will sound crazy too, but I don't have good eating habits. I tend to be an emotional eater, and you know, I eat because I don't ever eat because I'm hungry. I eat because, you know, life is good or life is bad, or, you know,
I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
Who knows?
I get
why.
it. Yeah. Everybody else might think we're crazy, but I get you.
You get what I'm talking about. And so with I know it sounds crazy, but when I met Bruce, he met me 80 pounds heavier than I am now. Mm-hmm. And he loved me 80 pounds heavier than I am now. Yes. And when I decided that I wanted to lose weight, I wasn't losing it for him because I already knew he loved me. I didn't need to be something else for him. Yeah. And so I was able to achieve it. And so I think the weight loss helped a lot. Now we did go out and pedal a lot around here, but I live in North Carolina. Yeah. And I live on the coast of North Carolina, and it's flat. Yeah. Okay. It is not flat coming from Oregon to Washington, D.C. Yes. There is no flat spot. I can attest to this.
Yes. You've done it. You've been there. You tell it like it is. Yeah.
So even though we did probably in a year, we probably rode about 1,000 miles. Wow. We did it 20 miles here and 20 miles there. It was different. Going out on this trip, we went on average of 44 miles a day for 72 riding days.
Wow.
Okay. We were gone for 3 months. So there were days, of course, where you took breaks because, I'm not a spring chicken. I'm not 20 anymore. Right. You have to have your breaks. Yeah. But on day one, I thought to myself, this is crazy. This is the craziest thing I have ever done. I'm never going to make it. Like, how am I going to make it all the way across the United States? I thought, day one, it was July. Yeah. It was really very end of June, but it was in Oregon and it was 50 degrees and raining and uphill. And I didn't have any fun on day one. I was exhausted and scared and anxious. And every time a car would go by and everything was so hard. And I didn't eat properly the first day. And by the time we were done, I was so hungry that I was like eating food straight out of the box, just, like sucking it in because I was so hungry. Yeah. And I kept a blog the whole way across. Okay. And I was very honest because I didn't want people reading it and thinking, oh, she's some superwoman. I wanted them to understand that there were days that I stood on the side of the road 2/3 of the way through the day and I'm crying. Yeah. And my husband's standing there not knowing what to do, looking like the typical, what do you do with the crying woman, right? And he would try to comfort me and learned very quickly that wasn't what I needed. I just needed him to let me get it out of my system. And then I would say, all right, let's get back on the bicycle. Okay. And off we would go again. Yeah. But at the end of that trip, as we are coming up, and I know it's the end, I can see the flag on the memorial. We stopped at the Marine Corps memorial there, the Iwo Jima memorial, because my husband's a former Marine and he felt this was going to be a really fitting. We were also raising money for Toys for Tots. Okay. So it just was a very fitting place to end. And you're coming up this hill and you can see the flag. Not the rest of the memorial, just the flag. And I started to sob because I realized that I had made it. Yeah. Like we had taken those days and strung them all together and made it from one side of the United States to the other. In fact, talking about it now, it still gives me goosebumps and makes me get a little choky. Yeah. And I had changed. Yes. Because I went from that first day, everything made me afraid and I was so nervous and I was sure I wasn't going to make it, to somewhere in the middle there, although I still had bad days and there were still days I didn't think we were going to make it, I started to believe in me. And I knew that if I put my mind to something, by golly, I was going to make it. And by the end of the trip, now when people say to me, can you do, and they, throw something out there, the answer is yes, I can. Do I want to? That's another question. But can I? Yeah, I can do anything I put my mind to. Yeah. And so I came home from that trip and I took this book, Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, and I started getting it in front of the right people and got a publisher. And it was like a journey from the point that I left that abusive spouse and I started kind of healing little by little. Yeah. But that trip just kind of was like this huge changing point where I recognized I can do anything. And I wrote a good book and I want people to hear about it and I'm going to get it out there into the world. Yeah. And I love being able to look back and see what a huge change that was for me, from the point where I didn't think that I could even get a job working as a Walmart greeter, all the way to the point that I now have a book and it's published and people are reading it and enjoying it. And it's great. So
yeah. Now, do you think some of those moments on the side of the road with the tears was almost like a cleansing or a mourning of all the other stuff you went through?
Oh, I'm sure, because I always say it's like swamp gas. You think that you've got everything all, you look kind of inside yourself and you say, yeah, everything's looking good. Everything's looking healthy. And then all of a sudden, up comes this yucky, monstrous, horrible thing, and you don't even know where it came from. Yeah. So a lot of times we'd be riding and all of a sudden up would come the swamp gas and I was not capable. Okay. I was no longer capable and I there's no way I can do this and I've made a huge mistake. And I was sure that my husband was going to be totally disgusted with my abilities and I was holding him back and all of those things that used to plague you. And so I would stand there and cry and kind of get it out of my system and then dig for that piece that I knew was there, which is I can do things.
Yes.
And after the good cry, it's almost like I was able to, pull up my big girl panties and say, okay, let's get on this bicycle and let's go.
Get to it.
And yeah. So it
you,
kind of really changed my whole outlook on life.
That's perfect. Now, would you recommend that or something similar even? Maybe other people can't ride across the country.
Right.
But would you recommend a thing like that for somebody to do that on purpose?
I think that everybody should have an adventure.
Okay.
And I don't know that it has to be a 3-month-long athletic kind of adventure, but I think that everyone needs to kind of push themselves past that feeling, like what you can do. You kind of have your nice little path, and you know where you are, and you feel really comfortable. And I think that everyone needs that experience of going way out of that comfort zone, wherever that is for you. Like if riding across the United States on a bicycle would be easy for you because you're super athletic and this is normal for you, then try something else.
Something else. Yeah.
Do something else big. Something that I wanted to do, something that my children said, there's no way, Mom, there's no way. You can't. You're not. What? Yeah. And all 4 of them in their own way pretty much said, are you out of your mind?
Right.
And I had different levels of support from my different children. Yeah. I think that's probably just true because they each have their own personalities, and so you have the incredulous ones and you have the ones that are, like patting you on the back, yelling, go mom, go, but you can still see it in their eyes. Like,
what? No, Mom, no.
No, Mom. Woo-hoo. You're crazy. Yeah. So, but no, I think that kind of experience is excellent for people, especially for people who are starting to doubt themselves in any way. Like, am I really worth anything? And I don't know how other people were, but at age 50, when I turned 50, it was the most horrible year of my life. Like that birthday just knocked my socks off. 30 didn't bother me. 40 didn't bother me. I'll be 60 in a year and I'm hoping it's not going to bother me. But for some reason, 50, I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, half a century. Yeah. More than likely. More than likely, statistically speaking, I'm not going to live longer than I've already been alive at this point. My life is half over. I mean, it just was a horrible thing. Yeah. And so, if you're struggling in that piece somewhere, look at those dreams that you had. Are there any you want to resurrect and go for it?
Yes. Do it now. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've had other people say to me, well, how old is too old to start writing? And my thought is if you're still breathing and you have a desire to write, then do it.
Then do it. Yeah.
Then do it. And I feel that way about anything. If you want to run a marathon and you've never done it before, but you want to, then go do it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I know you have shared it all with us, but maybe you can articulate what was the one big lesson that you learned from that?
From the trip itself?
From the trip or from your journey from being a young woman through marriages and to where you are? Because maybe it's just that I can do this. I don't know.
I think the lesson for me is hard to articulate. I would very much, I wish, like if I could go back and like wave a magic wand, I wish that I had never lost that ability to believe in myself.
Yes.
And I wish that as it started to chip away, because it didn't chip away all at once, and it didn't chip away just with this abusive relationship. I think it began chipping away before that, and maybe is what made me fall into this relationship and be willing to stick with it so long, but to notice that the chips were starting to go missing and to start doing the repairing right then instead of waiting until I was, this big blob of broken mess. Right. Because life has that ability to get in there and just start knocking you around, and you get these little chips and cracks and whatnot. And if you don't take the time to fix them, then you can end up in a situation that you wonder, how did I get here?
Yeah.
And it might be in an abusive relationship, or it might just be, I'm in a job I hate and I don't like my life. And how did I get here?
Yeah.
What am I doing here?
Yes.
That
happens
and you go
probably
back
more
and
often than we think. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can't find necessarily the one place. It usually isn't one big tipping point. It's little tiny things all along the way. So I think that, if I were talking to really young women, teenager girls, I would be telling them, keep your confidence about you. And when you start noticing it lagging anywhere, fix it then.
Yeah.
Find ways to deal with it right then. That might mean finding a counselor to talk to, or getting it out with a best friend, or going on an adventure, or doing something to prove to yourself that you are who you know you are. Who you know you are,
who you were made to be. Yes.
Yeah.
So talking about looking back, if you were to meet your younger self, I know you say what you would say to the other young women, but if you met yourself on the road as a younger woman, what would the one piece of advice you would tell her?
I think I would remind her who she is and tell her to keep that top of mind, that it's okay to be a wife, and it's okay to be a mother, and it's okay to be all of these things, but that none of those supersedes who you are on the inside.
Okay.
To kind of stay true to who you are. Because if you'll stay true to who you are, life's bumps and bruises can't hurt you quite as much.
Yeah.
You can kind of rise up out of it again. Yeah, it'll knock you down, but you can come back up because you remember who you are. I forgot who I was.
Yeah.
I was too busy trying to be things for other people, and I had forgot who I was.
Yes.
So
yeah. So now looking the other direction, looking towards 60, 65, what do you want to tell her to prepare?
Keep on trucking. Don't give up. Don't let little stupid things get in your way.
Okay.
Once again, remember who you are. Remember your dream. I want to be an author that people know.
Okay.
That's not going to happen today, and it's not going to happen probably this year, and it may take several years, but keep that in mind. That's what I want to be. I don't necessarily need to be so famous that I'm on the tip of everyone's tongue, but I want people to be excited about the fact that I have another book, and that, oh, hey, Teri M. Brown, hey, she's got another book coming out. I'd love that. And not because I want to be famous, but because I feel like I have something to say.
Okay.
And I feel like what I have to say can be valuable to someone else. So, yeah.
Nice. Very nice. So, what's next for you? You talked about writing and wanting people to want your next book. What's your vision for what's next?
Well, I've got Sunflowers Beneath the Snow out. And, it came out at this incredibly opportune and inopportune, depending on how you look at it. It's so crazy because, there's no way. At the point that I wrote this book, I wrote it in 2018. I got the idea in 2016, wrote it in 2018, and got it to a publisher in 2021. There's no way that I could have known.
Yes.
I didn't have this magic wand and whoa, I should put it out right here because there's going to be this problem. But because of it, it's creating a little bit of a stir. And so, I definitely want to use that to help people understand that I have this book. And I feel like the book is a great way to first understand a little bit about the current situation in Ukraine. Although it's a historic fiction, it deals with Ukraine from 1973, when it was under Soviet control, all the way to about 2016, when Russia had invaded the Crimean Peninsula.
Okay.
And it gives a really good backdrop and a background of understanding of the relationship between these two countries. But more than that, I've had several readers tell me that when they're done with the book, they now feel like they have a friend in Ukraine, and therefore what's going on in Ukraine matters to them.
Yeah.
Whereas before it mattered, but more on a very abstract level.
Right.
And now they have someone, even though it's not a real someone, they have someone they care about there.
Yeah.
And that has changed how they feel. And so that's kind of my goal with this book is I want to get it into the hands of readers so that they keep in mind that these are real people suffering real problems, that they have families and they have dreams and hopes, and they're not just a Ukrainian people.
Yeah.
They're actual, real, honest to goodness human beings that you can sit down and have dinner with.
Yeah.
And they're suffering, and that this should matter to us. And so, that's kind of the goal with this book. Would I love it to be a movie? Sure. Tom Hanks can play the main character. I got it all figured out.
Right. You got all the actors lined up. That's right.
But really what I'm hoping to do is to create that kind of understanding. And then on top of that, the book has a very small sliver of truth in it. The youngest, it's about 3 women, 3 generations. And the youngest generation is actually loosely based off of a woman that I know that's here in the United States from Ukraine. Okay. And she came here for a summer and was unable to go back home because Russia had invaded. And it had invaded her country right where her parents lived. Wow. And she's never been able to go home since. And so, at 19, she came here for a summer.
Really?
And she's never been,
She didn't intend to come here and stay.
No. She was unable to go home. Yeah. And in 2016, so she'd been here for 2 years at that point, she came to my home and she told me this incredible story of something that happened to her in New York City. And I thought, I must be misunderstanding. There's no way. This is one of those things where, like, truth is stranger than fiction, because it was like, this cannot be true. So I thought there must be a language barrier that I just wasn't understanding. So I asked a lot of questions, and she's agreeing to everything that I'm saying. Yeah. And I decided that little sliver of her story had to be told. So I created 80,000 words of fiction in order to tell this little tiny sliver.
Yeah.
Well, after, and so we've been keeping up, of course. And after Russia invaded Ukraine, I've been talking to her every day. Okay. How is your family? How are you doing? And she contacted me 3 days ago, and she told me that she had gotten together a large group of artists who were donating some of the proceeds of whatever it was they were creating to a Ukrainian fund. And then she said to me, I need your book.
Okay.
And so that's one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm donating for every book that's sold. I'm donating part of the proceeds to help Ukraine.
Fantastic.
Okay. So, that's part of that's kind of, and that makes me feel good because that's part of who I am. When I said, keep in mind who you are. Yeah. I am very community oriented. I am very people oriented. Yeah. I love to do service. When we rode across the United States, we raised $34,000 for Toys for Tots. I like doing things that help others, because I think a lot of times we get very caught up in our own junk. But when you reach out and you look out, a lot of what you're experiencing, you realize isn't quite as horrible as you thought it was. And you just feel so much better when you can lift someone else. Yes. And so this has given me a chance to not only be an author, but then do what I love, which is helping others too. So
that's beautiful. Yeah. Full circle. Just full circle, comes all the way around. Yeah.
It does.
So I don't know if you shared with us, but why historical fiction? Did you have a minor in history? Did I miss that? No. Okay.
No.
Yeah. Are you just interested in finding out the real story about places and then building the fiction around it, or?
Yeah. And I think that's part of it. I do. And I love research. So the idea that you can research and like find out all these really cool facts about time period is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing is I am very I love characters.
Yeah.
I love character development. And I'm not as good at the scenes and the worlds and the whatnot. I would be a horrible science fiction writer.
Okay.
Because a science fiction writer has to build these worlds, right?
Yes.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Like just get me to the people. I want to know what they're doing. So I think for me, historical fiction is a good place to be because the world is there. And all I have to do is go find out about it.
Yeah.
And then figure out a way to write it so that my character can live in it.
Yeah.
And then I get to tell my character's story and I don't have to worry about the fact that, oh my gosh, you mean I'm going to have to determine what kinds of things they eat and everything else? It's right here for me. I have to find a way of taking that very encyclopedia boring information and pulling it into a way that it's not boring anymore and becomes very much part of my character. And that to me is something I really enjoy far more than trying to create the world myself.
Okay.
So,
and as a writer, do you feel like a lot of reading helps you with your writing?
Absolutely.
For those who are interested in it.
And in fact, the more I write now, as I read, I have two different ways that I'm reading. Okay. Sometimes I'm reading just simply for pleasure and I don't really care.
Right.
If it's not even if it's not a great book, it's just good enough. And that's fine because I'm just reading to like get out of my own life. You're just going to do something else for a while.
Yes.
But I found that I'm also reading now with this eye of why is this book intriguing to me?
Okay.
What's pulling me in? Or what just popped me out of that scene? Like I was really into it and all of a sudden I'm not.
You're not.
So what happened here?
Yeah.
So that I can analyze that and say, I see what just happened. And then you try to avoid doing that in your own, or you try to do that other thing that pulled you in, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that reading, I also think even watching really good movies.
Okay.
Not the really just, the loud shoot screaming.
Yeah, everything's just blood flowing and
No, but like a really good movie, especially what I would consider a character-driven movie where, you're living that character's life and you're sitting on the edge of your seat, not because you're worried that someone's going to be exploded any moment, but because you want to know, is she going to, how is she going to handle this horrible situation?
Yeah. Because
you get a really good feel for those emotions and you can watch them on people's faces.
Yeah.
And I really watch that kind of thing because I have to be able to describe that in a book.
Yeah.
You can't say she was sad.
Yeah.
You have to explain what is going on with her face and her shoulders and the tone of her voice and the thoughts in her head and everything so that the reader says, oh, she is sad.
Yeah, they just feel it. Yeah. I've never analyzed it, but I know that most times when you read a book, then they make a movie of it. You're like, that's exactly what I saw in my head when I was reading the book. How did they do that?
And sometimes, though, I'm disappointed and I'll think, oh, what was in my head was so much better than that.
Yes. I don't know if I've noticed that one because very seldom, very seldom do I read the book first and then watch the movie. Usually I watch the movie.
I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it.
Oftentimes people say the book was so much better. So
I
don't know. Like I've never read it.
Part of that is because we all have our own imaginations. And so even though the author's doing a really good job of giving you all the details, you fill in the rest in your own mind. And so then the same thing happens with the movie director. And they fill in the details and it's, wait a minute. Why did you fill it in that way? This was a much better way.
Yes. You should have come to me and I would have told you how to do it. Yes. So can we get a few tips from your playbook? So one is, I know you have your book and we recommend that number one. So what would be your number two? Give us another book that you would advise all women to read.
I saw that question. I knew you were going to ask it.
Yeah.
And I have been thinking and thinking and thinking.
Yeah.
Here's what I want to say.
Okay.
I think for me, and I can't say, and this was my problem. I don't believe that there is one book that is perfect for all women. And so I hate to do that because I feel like it boxes people in. But for me, I have spiritual roots that I feel very strongly about. And so for me, reading scripture helps me daily to connect with that peace that could easily fly away when you're so busy with life. I think all women have something like that, whether it's Christian scripture or whether it's a higher power of some kind, or whether it's just affirmations,
encourage
from
affirmations
within themselves,
right.
Whatever that is for them, they should find that and focus on it. I hate to say, well, there's this one book everyone should read, because I just don't think it's true. I think we're all so different and we have such different needs that it's impossible to know what is that one thing. I don't think there is one.
And so just to bring it down a little bit lighter, what's the one thing that you have to do every day?
So I went back and forth on this one too. And it was between I have to have at least one little piece of chocolate every day, which I thought would make everybody laugh.
Yes.
But there is a lot of truth to that. And a day without chocolate just isn't really a good day.
Chocolate is therapy. Yes.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing that's probably, maybe a little more, I don't know. I like to be part of nature. Even if it's just a couple of minutes standing outside and getting, a good deep breath of air, or, listening to the bird, or watching, so I live near the ocean and I prefer to go walk on the beach whenever possible. But some days that's just not going to happen. Yeah. And so maybe it's just as simple as standing out in the backyard and looking up at the stars for a few minutes. But I think that connection with nature kind of helps ground you too, makes you realize that your problems are much smaller than the world, and that, for me, like, for instance, going to the beach and the waves come in and they go out, and they come in and they go out, and they come in and they go out. And they do that every day, all day. Yeah. And they'll do it tomorrow and the next day. They'll do it whether my problem is solved or not. Yeah. And long after I'm gone, that's going to keep coming in and going out. And that gives me some kind of a sense of, I don't know, like it centers me again. It reminds me that, life goes on and it has a purpose, and I may not even always understand it, but it's okay, because it's just going to keep going, and it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yes. And every time I look up in the sky, and sometimes you go in and out, back and forth to work, and you don't look up, and you don't look out and wider.
Now you're very narrow.
You're just narrow vision, getting things done. But then when you do, you're like, wow, I forgot that I'm not the center of the universe.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, even things is like, some people think I'm crazy, and I'm probably going to prove it now. But I mean, I can sometimes just look at a tree's bark and think, isn't that amazing? Look at the texture on that thing.
Yes.
Like, wow, how incredible is that? Or, a bird flying in the sky, and you think, look at the grace of that bird. If you've ever seen a pelican sitting on the ground and then seeing one flying in the air, that's an amazement to me, because they look like these big, bulky, they're weird looking, and they wobble when they're down on the ground, and when they're up in the air, they're just amazing.
Amazing. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. I love nature for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know the other day, my husband and I saw a bald eagle. I haven't seen a pelican. I don't think, maybe in the zoo, but I don't know if I've seen them fly. But we saw a bald eagle, and I was like, what is that? It's huge. It's humongous. What is that? And my husband loves them, so he knew what they were. But it does. The difference between seeing the pelican in the ground and the sky, I can only imagine, but I haven't seen it.
The pelicans, they have these big, long beaks, and they look like fat little old men with a cigar or something. They just have this really ungangly look. But when they're flying, it's amazing to me. It's like, how is that thing up there doing that beautiful? And you want to go with them and just soar right along with them.
Yes. I think we should all spend some more time in nature every day and look up and then be reminded of how magical.
Well, if you live in a city and you can't get out into nature, bring some in. Have a plant. Do something where you can, commune with nature just a little bit, because it really is. I just feel like there's
so
just
important.
Something to it that reminds you kind of your place in it all. We're not the center of life. I'm not the center of life. Yeah. I wish I were sometimes, but
sometimes
I'm
I do. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm not. And it's good to remember that, because we can get ourselves so, crunched up where, like you said, you got the tunnel vision and it's all about me, and my life, my. And sometimes, just the stepping outside and looking up at the stars, and you think, and everyone else and everything else, and it kind of opens you back up to being able to see more than you.
Yeah. And then it takes pressure off of you, because you don't have to control everything and take care of everything, and it doesn't all rest on you. Yeah.
No, because you can't. As much as you want to, you can't.
Yes.
And, to recall that every so often gives you permission to put down some of what you're carrying and say, this isn't mine. I can't do anything with it, and move on. So,
yeah. I know. And lately, Teri, I've been telling myself to remember today and remember this moment, because you can get so wrapped up in I've got to do's that, did you stop and say hello to the grocer? Hey, how are you today? Or, spend time with your family even, because, I could work all day and all night.
Oh, yeah.
Did you smile? Did you ask how they're, yeah.
Well, and I think, so for me as a writer, I think that journaling is a good thing to do, because you said, remember this moment. Well, spend 2 or 3 minutes writing down something that happened that day that you were grateful for.
I'm going to start doing that. Yeah.
It's amazing what that will do for you, because first of all, it focuses your attention on something you're grateful for instead of something that's nagging at you.
Yes.
You start to recognize that every day, even in the worst of the worst days, there's something to be grateful for.
Yeah.
Even in the worst of the worst days. In fact, if you went to Ukraine right now and you talked with people who are hiding in bomb shelters, they can tell you something good that happened to them that day.
Yeah.
They had a conversation with someone. They found out that someone that they thought might have been hurt wasn't. They survived through another day. Someone brought in fresh food. Something happened that they're grateful for. And I think that if we can try focusing on that, this every day, like you said, focus a little on today. Well, focus a little on what are you grateful for? Having that grateful spirit changes how you feel about life.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes, it does. And
now I'm getting philosophical.
Yeah. Yes. But then you change how you feel about life, and then that will affect the person you're with, and then the person they deal with, and then the person that wasn't so happy over there.
Can you imagine if everyone was grateful for one thing a day and remembered it?
Yeah.
It would literally change the world.
Yeah. Wow. We should have you rode across the country. You can do a gratefulness campaign and you could probably change the world.
Gee, look at that. I should ride across. No.
I'm pushing you. Notice I'm pushing you to do it.
Yeah. I was going to say, okay, Julia, when are you headed out?
Right. Yes. Yeah. I can't even ride downtown. Yes. Well, this was so wonderful. Please help our listeners to know how they can get in touch with you after this podcast is over.
Okay. I think the best way would be at my website. So it's www.terimmbrown.com, and that's Teri with 1 R.
Yes.
And there you'll find all my social media. There is a page where it's a contact me page where you can just reach right out. It'll come straight to my email. And I do my very best to reach back out to anyone who reaches out to me. Well, as long as they're real people. I've had to get rid of all kinds of social media yuck, but
Yes. Yeah, we all get some of that. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're real, I'll reach back out to you.
Yeah.
And on the website, you'll be able to purchase the book if you wanted the book.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm donating to a Ukraine fund for every, book that's sold. You can also get on my newsletter. And if you get on my newsletter right now, you can get, I've got a list right now of 10 books that 10 historical fiction books you've never heard of that will make you cry. Because I feel very strongly that people get caught up in the New York Times bestseller lists and they don't ever get past that.
Yes.
And the problem with New York Times bestseller lists, they're great and I'd love to be on one, so don't take this wrong. But the problem with only looking there for your books is that those lists are very much media driven, market driven. And so you're never going to find anything that's outside of whatever happens to be in at the moment.
Right.
And so, if you wanted to know about something else, you're not going to find it there. And I really feel that literature is a way to open your eyes and go wider. Okay. And those lists tend to narrow it back down again. So my list is, these are books that never made that list and should make yours. So that's
okay. Good. No, that's very true, because you can see those lists being very focused.
Yeah, they do. They get very focused on whatever happens to be the particular agenda for the moment. Yes. And I don't even mean that in a bad way, but it's kind of what's in. It's like watching teenagers dress. They all wear the same thing, and then next year they'll all wear the same thing that's different, but it's same to them. Yeah. It's the same with books. I think it's the same with movies, and it's the same with a lot of those things, especially when there's the best of lists. Yeah. And so, I just kind of feel like we should try to branch outside of that a little bit and take a look and see what else is out there for me. Yes.
And that's where you sometimes find those little gems that and that's why I love to get advice from people like you, because you've read things that are off that list and off the mainstream that we may not have heard about, that we'll really enjoy and even maybe help us a little bit.
Well, and like I said, I think that it's really important that we reach outside of ourselves.
Yes.
And,
this is it.
We get into that narrow focus, narrow. This is what we know. This is what we know. This is what we know. And then you don't go anywhere else. Yeah. And then you don't grow. There's no growth if you just keep doing the same old thing, reading the same old thing and reading what everyone else is reading. Go ahead and be that person who reads something that's not on that list, and then go tell your friends about it, have a discussion about it, and see where that goes, because that's where growth comes from.
Okay. So I have to ask this question, because I just keep hearing historical fiction, and I'm like, it's like history class, civics.
No, it's
I don't
not.
want to. Okay. So what help somebody like me who hears historical fiction and thinks, no way, where's Harry Potter?
Okay. No, and I understand. I do understand, because I actually like Harry Potter too. So I think that my advice would be, if you pick up a historical fiction and you're not getting into it, don't write off historical fiction. Maybe write off that particular one for some reason. Maybe it's too detailed for you. Maybe it's getting way into the nitty gritty, and you're not into historical fiction so much that you want all the nitty gritty. I recommend that you look for historical fiction that, like I said, is very character driven, that the historical part is just the backdrop, and that the story is what you're after. And it just happens to be set in another time. Okay. And while you're reading and getting to know this character and falling in love with this character, you happen to learn a little bit about history too.
Okay. Yes. So we need to start with yours, because yours is character driven.
I agree 100%.
Absolutely. That's actually going to be the first one I try, because I don't think I've ever, I have never read a historical fiction. So this is going to be a great experience, because I really believe what you said, get out of your comfort zone, try something different. different brain cells will fire. You'll get a different perspective on life, and you'll actually grow. And you might actually find something that you were passionate about that's new. So
and you would have never found it any other way.
Any other way. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're so happy that you're here to share it with us.
Well, thank you. I really have enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the F50 Woman podcast. Join the F50 Woman movement and this diverse group of voices to help change the world one woman at a time. Why should you join at your age? Because we're not done yet.